Baseball legend Yogi Berra responded to a discouraged reporter's query regarding his trailing team's chances with, "It ain't over till it's over," stating in no uncertain terms that nothing is cast in stone and we can influence outcomes by putting in the work required. One of my early memories is sitting at the dining room table with my uncle and cousins as they discussed their plan for harvesting their ripening wheat crop. Knowing their family were good church folk, I expressed some surprise that they intended to forego services in the morning and head directly to the field and put in a full day's work on a Sunday. Without missing a beat, my God fearing uncle explained God didn't still have a crop in the field on Sunday. We do, and it won't wait. Much later in life, I realized my uncle was expressing his understanding of what science of mind tells us about the nature of spirit. Nothing is cast in stone, and our outcomes depend on the work we put in. Spirit is always building things, creating new from itself, guided by the beliefs we choose to empower. My uncle had chosen to put a crop in the field, and climate, seed selection, and time had produced a crop to harvest at a certain time, regardless of what any calendar, tradition, or edict had to say about it. I share this memory to emphasize how self-defeating we are when we lock ourselves into one solution based on outdated or incomplete information. We often see solutions as the end of a journey. We find our car keys and stop looking for them. But it is not that easy when the objectives are more complicated. Maintaining a strong spiritual anchor in our thinking is essential to revealing solutions that work for everyone where multiple solutions appear attractive. Typically, people stop looking for a solution when they find one. And that makes perfect sense. Why would we continue looking for your car keys after you had found them? Of course, you would not. Finding your car keys is the best possible outcome to the problem of not knowing where your car keys are. Oh, if only all life's dilemmas were so easily parsed. Follow me, if you will, through a more dynamic search for a solution. A solution that seems obvious, but one I'm willing to bet you've never given much thought to. The problem: you are on some level, call it the first floor, and need to get to a different level, say the second floor or the third floor of some building. What comes to mind? We could throw up a ladder and the problem is solved. But say we are people of some means and scurrying up and down a ladder in fancy clothes or carrying our collections of stuff we have acquired just grows wearisome and not just a little dangerous. So some brilliant soul is inspired to stack some stones, creating a staircase that is easier to traverse, if not slightly more dignified. But stones are heavy, so we keep the structure to a minimum: narrow, steep, no handrail or railing, but perfectly workable. It may even be desirable because it is easy to defend with a sword or pike. If spirit were as stuck in the mud as some people seem to be, all of our multi-storied buildings today would have narrow stone stairways just like in the good old days. But spirit is restless and receptive, and so are most people. The steep, narrow stairway created its own problems in time, and people sought new solutions to the problem of getting to the next floor. Stairways became safer, built wider, and evenly spaced with steps and risers. Handrails became standard, and railings designed to keep children from falling off. Considerations for people who are not as strong and healthy, and our reliance on the wheel for moving things led to ramps and elevators to supplement some simple stairs. Frequently, if you see a ramp leading up a couple of steps, a young healthy person will simply jump up onto the platform, but the older infirmed person or the person confined to a wheelchair will find the ramp changes their world. As a left-handed person, I can attest to the fact that not everyone sees the world from the same perspective. Something as simple as which foot is dominant is different in the controls of a car. I use my right foot on the gas pedal just like a right-handed person would. However, my right foot is not my dominant foot, so I have mentally adapted to using my non-dominant foot to control my car. This is really handy because the dominant side of my brain can take naps while I'm hurtling down I-95. It is frequently given that left-handed people are often uniquely creative with solutions simply because of their altered perspective. It is also true that left-handed people were feared and ostracized in some societies because of those differences. Even in my lifetime, schools practiced conversion therapy to cure left-handedness. Who knew we were just one of Spirit's many tools to bend the common consciousness? I wonder if there are any other anomalies among us whose perspectives may be enlightening. Recently, a person whose political views are pretty much the opposite of mine shared a meme where it was being announced that Harvard had hired a transsexual person to give a particular class or lecture, I don't know which. The meme questioned the value of a Harvard education based on that one decision. My perspective is that a non-transsexual person, there are perspectives I cannot possibly share intuitively with a person who has or does live the transsexual experience. Therefore, I ask, why wouldn't you want to hear this different perspective? How can it be bad to learn from someone who has walked a path different from the one you are on? My spiritual foundation does not judge the path others have lived, nor does it confine me to a particular path outside of simply living spiritual principles. I am not threatened by the perspective of someone who has traveled a different path. I am not compelled to alter my thinking. However, I am compelled to accept that others have different perspectives. This does not conclude that we have different values, simply different ways at arriving or demonstrating those values. My value system, my spiritual principles say, I see where you're coming from. I understand how that's affecting you, and my thinking can now take your perspective into account when I resolve within myself how I want to proceed. It doesn't mean I automatically adopt your perceived solution. My hope would be that you can understand my perspective, and together we can develop a solution that both of us can live with. Some people see the solution as removing the consequences. Others lean toward removing the cause. Take, for example, the case of the abject failure of the immigration system in this country, speaking from the United States in 2025. For some, the answer is just round up everyone and ship them out. No consideration for circumstances, no legal process, no thought for established commitments. It is cruel, it is inhumane, and it violates existing norms and laws, but it works. Another approach involves dissecting the failures that have led to the problem and systematically developing solutions to repair or restructure the system. A quick and dirty look at the same immigration system reveals two avenues to explore. The first requires looking at the reasons people may be choosing to come here and developing policies aimed at alleviating the demand. This is a State Department issue, responsibility, and a whole other conversation. So let's move on to the second avenue, processing those who still come in. It is a volume issue. When our schools are overcrowded, we build more classrooms. When dealers can't keep cars on the sales lots, we build more cars. If there are more cases to review than the system can handle, how difficult is it to see that expanding capacity is a more logical solution than expanding the backlog? What does Spirit tell us? When you are a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But love, Spirit tells us, is more powerful than fear. If your worldview, your faith philosophy is myopic, confined to long since disproved theories that stem from limited information, workable solutions will fall outside your view. If we believe the earth is flat, how can we conceive of a solution that lies over the horizon? My generational memory remembers how our Allied veterans returning from World War II were often credited with prevailing in situations where their adversaries could not, simply because our individual soldiers were able to think outside the box and develop solutions that would never be approved in the chain of authoritarian command, where only pre-approved policies and procedures were allowed. Spirit thrives on our diversity. Spirit created our diversity. We are endowed with freedom of choice. This is not a curse foisted upon us by a vengeful God because we developed an appetite for fresh fruit. We are expressions of spirit. For us to have freedom of choice, that freedom must be infused within spirit, as all things are. If you are new to this teaching, stay tuned. Our basic premise is that spirit is infinite, and surprise, that doesn't leave room for anything to exist outside of spirit. Ergo, freedom of choice and spirit are codependent, and it is actually freedom of choice that fuels spirit's creative drive. And spirit needs stuff to create, because that is what spirit does. And again, for any newcomers, did you catch the part earlier about love being stronger than fear? That's another one of our basic premises. Spirit is love. It is through love that spirit creates for us. That is why it does not judge our beliefs. It just acts on them without question. Oh, and again, that infinite thing. Spirit is love. Spirit is infinite. Voila. Love is infinite, meaning fear is an illusion we create for ourselves because there is no place for fear in spirit. We have freedom of choice, so we choose to accept the illusion of fear as real. That pesky, loving spirit has no choice but to create the appearance of fear for us. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. But fear is unsustainable without a lot of outside effort. We must completely deny our spiritual nature to accept fear. We must allow ourselves to surrender our opinion of ourselves to the influence of others. Surrendering to the influence of others can seem easier than putting in the work and accepting the responsibility of creating our own outcomes. And yes, maintaining a conscious unity with spirit requires work. The good news is we can start that work at any time. We can fall from time to time and pull ourselves back up. We can change our thinking in an instant and get right back in the game. Anything is possible, because it ain't over till it's over. Thank you for your attention.